All right, good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday already, and it's January 29th, so past the first month almost of the year. And one thing really struck me the other day. I was looking at sort of the numbers for the brokerage and this sort of thing, and some decent numbers, and those are lag measures. So the lag measure is, how many closings do we have year to date? What I can't see is everybody's pipeline. But as you look at your pipeline, one of the things that has to occur to you is I'm only going to get so many shots this year. I'm only going to get so many at bats. And when I say at bats, I mean opportunities to get in front of a buyer or a seller and present who I am, how I think, and what I do for them. That is, and and chances are you're going to be competing. You're competing whether or not you realize it anyway. You may not be competing with someone else who's sitting down with them, but you may be competing with a thousand other websites. Some of them very, very slick. Some of them offering immediate gratification. And so when you get the opportunity to sit in front of somebody on a listing or a buyer presentation, I think it's massively important to have the case for you really, really buttoned up. And so we've talked about listing presentation. I have an entire boot camp, I think 2 episodes on listing presentation, how to go about it, how to think about it. So you can feel free to go back to that. But I want to talk about something that Kurt brought up before we hit record, which was getting a second set of eyes, maybe second set of expert eyes on your presentation. I had the opportunity recently. I had some folks who I know who are starting a new company altogether. They happen to be in the industrial space for real estate, and they've got this new technology, and they're sitting down and asking investors for money. And they went through a round of about 2 weeks where they met with everybody that they knew has to give presentations professionally. And so I was honored to be asked to sit down with them and critique their presentation. Really, I mean, it's their listing presentation to investors to put money into this venture. And when they get that money, they'll be able to hire and build a whole firm and move forward. And there is the same thing happens when you do a listing presentation. They are deciding to put their money behind you, to invest into you as the vehicle by which they're going to be able to sell their home. Same thing with a buyer presentation. In fact, I've had a few coaching sessions with folks in the last 6 months where instead of calling it a buyer presentation, we actually call it a listing presentation for buyers, because really what you're doing is listing a buyer to the market. And I think that's an important reframe. So I want to maybe pull this apart, and we've got a small crowd here, so that's great. I love these days where we don't have quite as many folks on the line, and we can get into this. So active participation here is more than welcome. Cut me off, jump in, tell me I'm crazy. But here are some ideas behind this. And Kurt, thanks again for teeing this up. The first thing is, some of your competition will go in hoping to win on their charm, on the car they drive, the suit they're wearing, their just personality, their persona, and try to win that way. I want to propose to you that if you're going up against that person, you win every single time. Right? That is, you come in with an unfair advantage, and you do have to look professional and make sure your car doesn't look like it hasn't been washed in 10 years, and like you want to look orderly and ready to go and professional. They're hiring a CEO, but don't try to trade on that. Don't make that be the reason people will work with you. So, and I think oftentimes we can fall into this, hey, you're going to like me or not, and we're going to work together if you like me enough. So how do you get past that? And I think, Kurt, you were talking about, you brought your listing presentation, UNCC brought your listing presentation to John Kirk and said, hey, John, what do you think of this? And he was able to give you some feedback on it to make it that much more refined. Uh, what were some of the takeaways, Kurt, that you had from that conversation with John that kind of made you go, ah, here's what I need to do differently, or here's how I need to go from sort of being just, very entrepreneurial and going in there and doing my best versus what you're doing now? What came out of that?
Um, I guess I would say that one of the big ones is that you should always assume that you're competing. There's another agent who's going to meet with them, and um, who is, he says, the Yankees or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
because he loves the sports analogies.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of have in the past, when people call me, say, hey, I'd really like to, we're getting our house on the market, and I'd like to talk to you about what we need to do to get it ready. And and then and I would go out and give the presumptive close, but more I would come from a place of, here's my advice for how to get it ready, on the assumption that having used my advice, they would choose me. And that just isn't the case always. So I had like really no formal presentation for those situations. I had like I said, I was relying on my charm, So just using the Tower Hill
Template, if you will.
yeah, and adjusting that and putting in my own stats, it helped a lot. I still don't know if I got this most recent one, but I went in with confidence, knowing that, because I knew for certain on this date that it was definitely going to be me against other agents.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that framework of always knowing that you're competing, and the competition doesn't look the same as it did 10 years ago or 5 years ago even. So that's great. One thing that I think is important is to own your statistics, and so the question is, okay, well, I'm a newer agent, or I don't have all sorts of stats. What kind of statistics am I talking about? Well, what I'm not saying is that you personally have to own all the statistics, but you need to speak statistically about how they're going to be able to sell their home. Now, it's helpful when you can start to talk about, I mean, even if you just have one deal under your belt, and I'm looking at the screen, and all of you have more than one deal under your belt, as far as I know. So you've got 5 deals, 10 deals, 50 deals under your belt. You can start to talk about my days on market, my list to sales price ratio, um, versus the market, and what that means, right? So one of the things that I've done traditionally is lead with some of that. Say, we're going to get into why it is that we are able to outperform the market, and I can show you these statistics now. And without some description, you're not going to understand why this is what it is, right? But I'm going to show you why it is that we're able to outperform the market as we go through this conversation, right? I also don't like to talk about it as a presentation. I like to talk about it as a conversation. And so now you framed some really important statistics, 2 very basic statistics: list sales price ratio, days on market versus the market. And usually, if you're doing your job well, you're typically outperforming the market in that way. And then you can get really granular about things, but you need to start speaking statistically about this, and framing why those stats are important to them. Now, you may say, okay, well, I'm not talking to somebody who's analytical. That's fine. The analytical people are going to have perhaps more skepticism about those statistics at first, and so you're going to have to, you want to let them know that you're going to justify those stats. And for people who are non-analytical, it's simple enough that they go, okay, look, that's pretty cool. And they kind of get more excited about what you're bringing to the table. But the part of the reason why I like to start with statistics is you really should. What else would you expect from somebody who's a consultant who's coming in to mount a business to sell to sell a piece of property or to sell anything. You would expect they would say, here's my track record. Here's why, at least numerically, why people work with me. Now you move away from that and you go into how I think about things and how I work. So the second thing that I want to sort of talk to you about is moving from those early statistics to what historically was sort of the about me, right? When you're on a website, there's the about me page. And I think you have to be very, very balanced here. And I'm open to some conversation about this, but uh, the first mindset of sort of trading on your charm can be really, really tempting. Um, I think you have to always ask yourself when you're presenting the about me section or the about my team section or whatever you're going to present, what's in it for the person, your audience listening. So it's really, really easy to start to get into all sorts of accolades and the 20 reasons why people choose me and all of this, right? That may not be sequitur for your audience at all. So what's in it for them? And it may change depending on the audience that you're in front of, or the marketplace that you're in front of, or the demographic you're in front of. So understand that certain things may just sort of distract from where you are. So again, when you're sitting in front of somebody who's highly analytical, maybe they work for the World Bank, you want to maybe talk about your background. So for me, when I knew that I was sitting down with somebody who is, from a banking background or an economics background or a financial planning background, I would say, so I got a master's, and it's in economics. So you'll hear me talk about the marketplace through that lens a little bit, right? For other people, that may not be as important. So when I was younger, I grew up building houses, and so if I was in a situation where I knew that the house needed a lot of work, I would frame things in that regard. Growing up, I built houses, and that was the family business. So you'll hear me sort of wear that hat occasionally. That may strike you as funny coming from a real estate agent, but just so you know, that's where I come from. That's the world I come from. Now you framed it, and it's all about what's in it for them, right? It's all about how it's going to impact them. They're thinking to themselves, gosh, I'm going to have to worry about all this stuff. And you may have just removed that objection by your background. So that's the about me. I don't get into like, hey, father of, 8 kids and live in, in this area or anything like that, unless they ask. That's just me. I think you've got to play the audience correctly there, and you want to be really, really relevant to folks. So that's the next piece. I'll stop there. Any questions about that piece? Just talking about yourself in these meetings. All right, so I'm going to move to the next piece then. And the next piece of the listing presentation is really presenting your plan of attack, right? So, and that plan of attack, and I'm sort of rolling through the listing presentation, and again, feel free to stop me or chime in. But the next piece, sounds like somebody.
So I got a question, and I might have missed this. Where in this sequence are you, kind of walking through their house? As I think it was Kurt was saying earlier, he would kind of walk through the house and give them advice. Is that at the end? Is that at the beginning? Is that partway through?
Great question. Here's how I've always done it. And John, I see that you're on as well, so feel free. This is the beauty of this. I remember training John on how to do a listing presentation. Now he's gone out and done hundreds and hundreds of listing presentations without me. So he may be doing this totally differently and innovated a totally new way. Your close rate's really good. So, but here's how I did it. I would come in always on time. I would always actually offer to take my shoes off, and usually would start to take my shoes off. I'd wear, shoes that I could slip off in order to sort of honor their home. Like, this is, I just came in, especially this time of year, salt on the ground or muddy out there. So I'm just going to walk you through what that looked like. Come in and say, have my bag. Actually, even before I got to the door, I would stand outside for a second and check out the exterior of the house. So I'm looking at roof. I'm looking at what I think the age might be. I'm looking at whether there's any wood rot. I'm kind of doing a quick visual inspection of things, also things that they've improved on the house. And so, and oftentimes there's something that they have improved and you can endear yourself really quickly. So I'd come in and say, gosh, this hardscape is awesome. When did you put this in? This is gorgeous, right? Obviously after, shaking hands and saying who I am if they've not met me before. Then I'm at the front door, or I'm in the foyer, and they go, well, where would you like to start? Oftentimes people just assume you just want to tour the house right away. And so what I would oftentimes do is I'd have my bag and I'd say, well, would I be able to put my bag down really quick? And they go, sure, where'd you like to be? And I'd say, kitchen or dining room table works fantastic. I always wanted people to sit in chairs so they didn't fall asleep. So if you're in the living room, people are falling asleep. Nice cozy chairs. I've had, I won't mention names, but I've had folks on listening presentations with me who kind of start to doze off during the listening presentation, who I brought along to learn. So careful of the living room furniture or the family room furniture, even though that's kind of where they thought you might be. And then we'll go from there, and I'll set everything down. And I'll sit down for a second there, and I'll say, listen, here's what I'd like to do today. I'd first like to get a view of your home. So take a quick tour and get a sense of everything that you've put into your home, the things that you liked when you bought the home, and take some really, really good notes so I can really understand what you've got. I've done a lot of research on your home, but this is my first time obviously being here. So that's the first part. The second part is I'd like to come back here. And when I say here, I'm touching the table. And when we come back here, what I like to do is walk you through exactly how it is that we think about bringing a home to market and getting the highest possible price for that home, and doing that very systematically. So we'll do that after we tour the home. And then obviously throughout the process, I'd invite you to ask me questions, and this is a dialogue. This is about you getting your home sold in the way that works best for you and your family. Does that make sense? And they go, fantastic. Now you've laid out a plan. You've shown them that you have a plan and a way that you work. And that's a very attractive thing. So yes, the tour is first. And on the tour is also where I am typically doing sort of a needs analysis with them. So we're talking about timing. We're talking about any other assets they need to sell. We're talking about other people involved in the transaction. We're talking about their finances. We're talking about their involvement maybe of their company, because maybe it's a company move and the company may be involved in some way. There's just corporate relocation or something like that. So you want to understand circumstances and let them see that you're taking notes and listening. I have also split those up where I do a needs analysis, and I do that face to face, and then I do a tour. And I oftentimes depending on the situation, will either break those up or put those together between the tour and the needs analysis. So that's how I handle it. And because I think it's really, really tough to go right into a presentation. It feels like you're just coming in and selling right away versus understanding them and the asset that you have to sell prior to presenting how you're going to think about it. And if your presentation doesn't take that into consideration, it's going to fall on deaf ears. They're not going to, and you could have some serious missteps. John, any alterations to that or any sort of philosophical disagreements there?
No, everything is basically very similar to what I do. You're gonna so the framework is virtually the same. what you say has to be yours. I think the biggest thing that I would say is to have a plan when you're going in there, and they're always going to ask you, what do you want to do? Where do you want to start? So to have the plan and to be able to articulate the plan. Here's what I think we're going to do today, or not think, but this is what we're going to do, and then you articulate that, and then just do that, right? And they'll be impressed that you even have a plan. So I got to go on mute.
Yep. So, and I think this is where you beat out anybody who comes in and tries to trade on track record when it comes to like, hey, look at me, I'm such a really, big time agent. I can't tell you how often I've come in with a plan and executed well on that plan and won against the established farmer, sold in the neighborhood for 20, 30 years. Right? That you can utterly dislodge that person's advantage or perceived advantage by coming in and being very strategic and super professional and well thought out. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody who has a way in which they work and is going to apply that and is very thoughtful about that and is hearing them. So, all of this framework is also malleable, right, to the situation. However, wouldn't it just be a cry and shame? And I've done this myself. It's a total cry and shame when you go in and they love you. Like it's like we're like, I've never met these people, but it's as though we're old friends and it's great. And they're like, hey, you want a glass of wine? And hey, like it's awesome. And you assume that because there's such great rapport, you don't need to do your listing presentation. Big mistake. 2 reasons. 1, you're always competing. And so when they run into a friend at a cocktail party before they've signed your documents, because you think it's so good that you didn't go and get docs signed, you didn't send it to them right away and lock it up. Heck, you felt awkward even sending it to them because you had so much rapport. Like, do friends really make friends sign documents? Yes, absolutely they do, because it's the right thing for the friendship. But you've got to be able to get there. And so you don't do your presentation, the listing presentation, in a thoughtful way, in a way that takes into consideration what they need. And as a result, they don't know why to refer you when they run into friends, even if they do use you. Or competition comes in the door and is better prepared and gives them all of these reasons why they should be working with them. And they're really good reasons. In fact, they're the reasons that you would have given them anyway to work with you, but you didn't do that. They went ahead and presented that, and you got a phone call. And the phone call is, we met with somebody else, and we think you're an amazing person, and really enjoyed our time together. And gosh, in the future, we'd love to be able to work with you, but we really feel like this person is just a better fit for us. What they're saying is that you didn't show them why it is that you're a better fit, but that you are the right fit. And so you have to win. Yes, they want you at the end when you present how you think, they're going to like you. But don't trade on that, and don't let that be the distraction. And even more so when you know people already and you're going into your home. And I'll end with this. Really, really important piece here. When you have to go through a more formal presentation or more formal elaboration of what you do professionally, you have to, for at least me, I always had to have a line or a thought process to shift us from familiarity to business. And here's what I would say. We've known each other for a long time. And I just am so appreciative for the opportunity to be here with all of you. This is a really, really big deal. Moving is a huge deal. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to present to you the reasons why anybody would work with us, whether they've known us for years or not, or just met us. Because I owe you that. That way you can make a decision based on fact and based on professionalism. and professional credentials that is right for you. Is that fair? Now what you've done is you've shifted it, and they go, absolutely, that's what we want to hear. But they're afraid to ask you that if they've known you too long. They feel like that would be odd. So you have to make room for that and go there. All right. Well, Kurt, thanks again for teeing that up. I know that was unplanned, but I think it's a very, very timely conversation to have right now. And that framework has like, this is a framework that can make you millions and millions of dollars. We do have a template ready to go for anybody at Tower Hill, and so please, if you don't know where that is, ask me, and I'm happy to get it to you. All right, everybody, thanks. Have a great day. We'll be back on tomorrow with Mike talking CFO mindset. I'll see you then.